My wife's nephew, 9, is a very active kid, always running around causing damages and hiding or throwing things around like keys, phones, my wife's meds, when he's able to reach the shelves. He survived a major surgery when he was a year old. No one expected he'd survive. My in-laws call him the miracle. As a result, they make sure to love him and appreciate his presence among them every day. His dad, my wife's brother, and I don't get on all too well. He doesn't like me because of my profession. Used to negatively comment on my work, my filthy home, my friends and family. In many occasions, he's called me R based on my opinions on certain topics, and many times he'd claimed my wife was better off without me. Things have settled down between us and we're now cordial to one another, but not close. Last Thursday was my wife's birthday. We wanted to celebrate just the two of us. We lost our 1-month-old daughter 4 months ago and her brother was a stillbirth. But my in-laws insisted on coming to throw a big party for her. I had to skip work to prepare for the guests mother-in-law invited. They only brought cake and I prepared a number of dishes, even for my picky sister-in-law. I had the kids in a separate room and served them mini burgers and left them to play. Later, I got back to all 4 kids crying because my brother-in-law's son threw their mini burgers at the wall after they refused to share with him. The wall was a mess, and so were the curtains. I immediately put him in timeout and he started crying, wanting his dad. My brother-in-law came asking, "What are you doing? He's never been put in timeout before. He doesn't even understand why you're doing this and you're scaring him right now." I told him what his son did, and he said, "Well, it's natural for kids to play with food." But the kids were crying after his son messed the food up I took time to prepare for them. He said I overreacted and overstepped to punish his own kid for him. Then he reminded me of what his son went through and how lucky the family is to have him with us today. I rudely replied that just because his son is a miracle doesn't mean his behavior should go unpunished. The argument ensued, and he had most of the family, including mother-in-law, side with him, calling me unbelievable for treating their miracle grandchild with such cruelty and taking my anger out on him over something kids do all the time. My brother-in-law said, "No wonder God called his sister's kids home. Not everyone deserves nor is fit to be a parent." I lost my crap on him and demanded him to leave. My wife wanted me to back down, but I insisted he leave along with everyone else who took his side. They said I needed to handle my anger and accused me of making a scene at my wife's birthday. Now he and mother-in-law are saying they won't visit when I'm home anymore and won't welcome me in their homes. My wife said I should have let her brother handle his son, completely ignoring that they were all at my house. I'm expected to send an email to apologize, but I refused. Absolutely not the a-hole. You were right. It doesn't matter if he's a miracle child. His behavior should not go unpunished. He was making the other kids upset and he shouldn't be put on a pedestal like that. When he grows up, nobody is going to care that he was a miracle child. And that comment your brother-in-law made about your kids was completely uncalled for. Not the a-hole. How on earth does anyone think it's normal for kids to chuck cheeseburgers around the house? I would have popped that brother-in-law after the called his kids home crack. So, at the very least, you handled it better than I would have. My niece is a 17-year-old rising high school senior. A little over a year ago, when she turned 16, my brother bought her a late 90s Nissan with 200,000 miles on it that can be generously described as a piece of crap, and more accurately described as a death trap. I've ridden in the thing twice, and both times it was shaking so hard that I was legitimately afraid for my life. On top of that, the deal that my brother made with her was that he would buy the car if she paid for maintenance, which, from my understanding, has already exceeded what he paid for it. So last week, my brother and his family came over for dinner, and my niece mentioned that the AC on her car had stopped working, which concerned me because we live in Southeast Texas, and the heat index has topped 100 degrees several times already this summer. So on Sunday, I decided to go over to CarMax and buy her a new car. Because as a teenager, I spent a summer delivering pizzas in a car with no AC, and it was the most miserable experience of my life. I suppose I could have just fixed the AC, but I thought enough money had been sunk into the car already. I bought her a completely reasonable, reliable, and affordable car. 2017 Civic with 26,000 miles. Nothing fancy, but good enough that she won't have to worry about car trouble again until after college. I should note that both my wife and I are high-earning professionals with no kids, by choice, so the $20,000 I paid for the car barely made an impact on our savings and isn't something I thought I had to think twice about doing. My brother, on the other hand, makes okay money working a trade, and his wife is a part-time waitress. They're not destitute, but they could not have easily afforded the car for themselves, let alone their teenage daughter. I brought the car over yesterday as a surprise, and my niece was ecstatic, but I could tell it was bothering my brother. He asked to talk to me privately before I left and accused me of spoiling his kid and giving her handouts and saying she should have to tough it out like we did. He wanted me to take the car back, but I refused because I think he's being ridiculous. It's not like I bought her a new BMW. I'm just trying to keep her safe and comfortable because I can and because I care about her. My wife says I should have asked him about it first, which I probably should have, but I wanted it to be a surprise and I didn't think anyone would be upset about it. Am I the a-hole? Yes, the a-hole. Your wife is right. You should have talked to your brother about it first. A $20,000 surprise for an adult is one thing. Such a surprise for a minor under the care of her parents without first talking about it to her parents is another thing. Not the a-hole. Tough it out like we did. Yeah, right. Until he loses his daughter to a routine traffic accident because her bag of a crud car. Your brother is an a-hole. I hesitate to call you the a-hole because this was a generous thought. But I also think you should have run this by your brother and maybe convinced him. There is no virtue in letting your niece drive a death trap, but there would have been virtue in finding a way to help your brother keep his pride. So, my dad is your stereotypical luxury car driving, status-conscious, white-collar yuppie. My mom is the typical schoolgate mother. Or should I say, was a yuppie, because my dad recently was laid off. His company needed to cut the fat, and from how he describes his interactions with his coworkers, I'm pretty sure they were looking for any excuse for him to go, and all celebrated his dismissal. My mom and dad were both exceptionally depressed at this. They recently had to sell their cars. What they ended up doing was renting newer versions of the luxury cars they sold. They then went so far as to getting, meaning engineering, new and very much fake license plates because the rental license plates and frame were too distinctive. So basically, they've been telling everybody that they're still well off and got new cars. My mom and dad's air of superiority has brought me to a tipping point. I'm so sick of them doing stuff like ignoring people who they think is below them. My dad has been having trouble job searching, so he ended up telling a mutual acquaintance, who has a new startup, that he wanted to parlay his skill set into the tech industry. My mom made a big deal about how they were coming over for a talk about why my dad is a good fit for the position. After I greeted them, with my mom telling me to not screw stuff up and saying my shirt makes me look puffy beforehand, I was shooed away. Later I overheard them talking about vacations, and then my dad brings up the new cars they bought with his bonus. I was done with their fake rich facade. I decided to go to the attic where they kept the real rental license plates for their cars, and I ended up going downstairs again. I entered the living room and smiled and held up one of the license plates and said to my dad, "Dad, I think this dropped from your car. Should I put it on the counter for now?" I held up the other one and said, "And this one was never on, I believe." Their acquaintances were also very status conscious and would recognize a rental plate and frame from a mile away, and I saw the wife in particular kind of hide a smirk while the husband didn't outwardly react. She said, "Oh, is that for the BMW you recently bought?" And my dad just sank in his chair. Afterwards, my parents yelled at me, and I yelled back, saying that maybe they could get some humility now that they are the losers they used to ignore. My mom started crying, and my friends are saying I was too harsh. However, I'm just sick of all their bull and cannot wait to move out soon. Am I the a-hole? Yes, the a-hole. Guess who is paying for the food? Your parents. Guess who needs a job? Your father. Guess who isn't getting that particular job? Guess who is going to have an even harder time getting hired now? Guess who is an entitled child? You. Yes, the a-hole. You didn't call him out. You humiliated them in a childish manner. Calling them out would be done in private, not to people your father could have relied on for help with a new job. Yes, the a-hole, for the way you called them out. I'm assuming based on your post that you live with them and also feed off your dad's labor. You potentially cost him another opportunity, so you screw yourself over in the long run. This is where maturity comes into play, because you house the same arrogance they do. You've just targeted them because of their attitudes. You could have called them out in private since you found out about the license plate. You just decided in your own arrogance to make a show of it in front of their friends. My 27 female, husband, 27 male, are fortunate enough to be financially stable. We aren't rich, but we both have careers that allow us to live comfortably in a high cost of living area. Last year, we were able to buy a new build 4-bedroom house with a completion date of early 2021. When the lease was up at our apartment, We moved back in with my in-laws temporarily while waiting for our house to be done. My brother-in-law, 32 male, also lives there. He doesn't make very good choices and have bounced around from job to job. He currently works 2 odd jobs. He confided in us that he was struggling financially and he wants to pull money out of his 401k. He told us that it was mentally draining to be 32 and still living with his parents. My husband and I talked and we agreed to let him stay with us when our house was finished. He wouldn't have to pay rent while he got back on his feet. This would give him a chance to save some money and get his own place. We've lived there for a couple of months now, and brother-in-law is constantly getting Amazon packages. 3 and 4 packages every day. He also bought a new shotgun, which he claims he needs for work. He is a security guard for a hotel at night. Then, he bought not 1, but 2 brand new cars, a BMW and a Nissan. He claimed 1 is his fun sports car for the weekend, and 1 is a commuter for work. He also already has another car at home. Both cars are much nicer than the 2 cars my husband and I drive. We have never bought brand new cars. When we expressed our concerns, he said he doesn't have to worry because he will be living at our house rent-free. It was never supposed to be a long-term agreement. It was to help him get back on his feet. We told him it doesn't seem like he needs any help and took back our offer. My brother-in-law says we were being unfair. He spent the money because he thought we were going to help him out. I feel like we are getting taken advantage of, but we did tell him that he could stay at our house to save money. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. In a perfect world, you would have started with him, but I think you need to set up some ground rules right now. If he says he won't do them, or if he tries and fails, then follow through with the consequences. Not the a-hole, clearly. Saying you can't afford something is a statement about priorities. It really means I would rather spend this money on something else. He is saying, through his actions, that he would rather spend money on luxuries for himself than finding his own home and respecting your privacy. He is the a-hole, and it is time for a deadline for him to move out. He can sell his BMW if he needs a deposit or rent money. Not the a-hole. You made the offer under false pretenses. He wasn't truthful about his financial situation. If he has money for all that stuff, he's fine. He can sell the cars to find a place to rent. Throwaway account. I, 29 female, lived alone in my own apartment for a while. This was until my older brother, 33 male, and his wife moved in with me about a year ago, after my brother ran into financial troubles. I happily let them move in with me, thinking it would give them a chance to get back on their feet. This is not what ended up happening. My brother would wake up way past noon every single day, and would spend all day watching football with his feet up on the sofa. My sister-in-law would also wake up way past noon, spend about half the day getting ready, and then either sitting on the sofa with her husband and browsing her phone for the whole day, or going out with her friends. For the first few weeks, I wasn't too annoyed, but this went on for months. They weren't exactly paying rent, and considering the whole reason they're staying with me is financial trouble, I never expected money from them. But my issue was that they didn't seem to be making an effort to get back on their feet, i.e., getting jobs or looking for apartments. It seems as though they saw my living space as a permanent solution, as opposed to a temporary one. I spoke to my brother about it a couple times and tried to, as subtly as I possibly could, ask if he planned on getting a job anytime soon. And his answer was always vague and dismissive. I'm working on it, etc. This is the part of the story where I may be an a-hole, and why I'm asking this on here. Considering it had been over a year since they moved in, I began asking both of them to do some chores around the house. Example, laundry, sweeping, hoovering, mopping floors, washing dishes, etc. I wasn't trying to be malicious. I just thought they might as well help me out if they're going to permanently live with me. My sister-in-law always seemed annoyed by this, but never told me no. My brother, on the other hand, was a different story. A few days ago, he approached me, quite irritated, and asked me why I was trying to turn his wife into a housewife. He accused me of forcing both of them to clean and cook and do things just because I'm getting too lazy to do them, and said it was disrespectful to make my guests do my housework. I tried to point out, as calmly as I could, that they've been living with me for over a year now, so I no longer considered them guests. They clearly weren't planning on moving out anytime soon, so they might as well pull their weight. My brother thinks I'm an a-hole and told me that my sister-in-law feels like she can't say no to me regarding housework and that I've made my home an uncomfortable environment for her due to my behavior. It's become awkward now, and I think I've made a mistake. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole, But allowing them to stay there for over a year without paying rent or getting jobs is an incredibly bizarre choice to have made. If they're going to be there, they have to pull their weight. The only reason your brother is confronting you about this is because he got used to taking advantage of your kindness. And he believes that if he makes you feel bad about being insistent that they contribute to the home in some way, that you'll stop and they can go back to being lazy. To be perfectly honest, what you need to be doing at this point is saying, you guys have 2 months to both find jobs and begin the process of moving out. I find it incredibly disrespectful that you would spend a year squatting here and then have the gall to complain when I ask for something as small as doing chores to help out. You need to kick these users out. You think you're being helpful, but you're enabling them to keep up this lifestyle on your dime. You need to contact an attorney to find out your legal rights in your state. Start getting your life back. It's up to them to get their lives back. You would be the a-hole if you let this go on.